Welcome. This is session 9, and we're in the middle of production, or you are in the middle of production. So what we really want to do is touch base with you around how the production is going. And then we also want to think about the next stage, which is the editing and how you get ready for the editing. So what are some of the sort of basic steps that you need to have in your mind as you move to the editing phase? So we have a slideshow that we're going to share with you. And then actually in this initial stage, it's really about just having a conversation about where you are and the challenges that you face. So let me boot up the slideshow. Okay. Now, so we're talking about shooting, production, and setting up the edit. And one thing is, so here's the structure. So we want to have a reflections on production activities, how to keep organized or how to get organized for the start of the edit. And then we'd like you to go into a 30-minute breakout session to have a discussion with your team on where you are, what issues you face, what you need to tackle going forward from here, what the next steps are, and so on, and give us a bit of feedback on that at the end. As you can see, these pictures were taken at the weekend, and 4 members of the class traveled with me up to Suwano in Shimane Prefecture, and they were filming the conference and doing interviews. And Luis Patron was there advising them. So we'd like to hear a little bit of feedback on how that went. And just as an example, here is some of the footage of one of the interviews that I'd like to share with you. This is one of the moderators from the conference. So he's been interviewed by Ayako, and Tenshin is filming. Now, one of the things I'd like to comment about is that this is very well framed as an interview. It's really nicely put together. But let's have a listen to what the guy has to say, and you can actually also hear the questions being asked as well.
今日のカンファレンスはとても良かったと思います。第1部のカンファレンスでは地域と市民という話ではあったんですけども、すごく活発な意見も出てきたし、2回目の午後からも学生、高校生たちの意見を聞きながら楽しくやらさせてもらいました。基本的にそのツアーの会議のいいところって本当に我々どんなミッションが来るかもわからない状態でアドリブでやってる面白さがあって、そういうアドリブでやってるそのなんていうかな、瞬間瞬間楽しめれるようなところがお客さんというか会場の方にも伝わったんであれば、そういう感覚で地域まちづくりをしてくれるとすごく嬉しいなと。何か計画しないといけないとか、何かしら頑張らないといけないっていうんじゃなくて、本当に気持ちよくやってくれたら、それが一番楽しい街づくりじゃないかなというふうに思いました。大丈夫。
ツアーの印象と、そのツアーのが直面している挑戦とか、
ツアーのもう日本全国の課題と同じで、多分少子高齢化、あと観光って今回コロナのこともあって大変だったと思うんですけども、ツアノの挑戦はすごく今ツアノ高校を中心に子どもたちが頑張ってやってくれてはいると思うので、そういった形でいろんな人がこのツアノに入って混ざって、でまた新しいことが生まれてくるような形でこのまま続けていただければ面白いことが起きるんじゃないかなというふうに思っています。
将来ツアノが変わっていく印象をどのように？
基本的にはもう毎年この会議に参加するっていう形で見届けていけたらなというふうに考えています。ありがとうございました。はい。ないです。ない。まあまあ喋りました。いえいえ、こちらこそ。
Okay, what did you think? You're muted, sorry.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The lighting was amazing. That backlight with all those little bugs and stuff, gorgeous. And the sound was very clear, you know, and there was no talking over the top of the interview. So everyone was quiet whilst he was speaking. And the eye line was really good. Yeah, great. Very nice.
Yeah, very nicely done. And yeah, the definitely it made a big difference to have the wireless mic set up.
Yeah.
So the students were really, they really got used to using those mics, and it makes a really big difference to the quality of the audio, you know, compared to last year where we had some audio issues. So what I really like to hear from you is just two aspects. The first aspect is about the interviews that you've done so far. You know, how do you feel the interviews have gone, or how do you feel that about the questions you've asked, or the interviewee and how they're responding to it? You could see in this particular example that the interviewee was actually pretty good because his answers were really focused, and he also tended to start answering in a way that it was easy for somebody watching to understand what the issue is. So he didn't go with like, yes, that's right, etc. It was like, oh, the Suwano conference is really important because of this and this and this. And then just to get some reactions of, you know, those of you who have been shooting, what you think you could have done better, whether you took notes for B-roll, and if anything unexpected happened. So that's about the interviews. And then the other side is using the equipment. So, you know, how have you found using the equipment and the audio equipment? And have you prepared? Did you prepare? Did you watch YouTube videos? What was it like being on location? What's it been like setting up and filming? What would you have done differently? And did anything happen that was unexpected? So I'm going to stop this slideshow now, and then maybe we can just hear a little bit of feedback from you. So firstly, for instance, anybody who has been doing interviews so far, can you tell us about what's been your experience of doing the interviews? What's been fun? What's been challenging? Who would like to kick off? Maybe Miura-san, because you were kind of the interviewer, weren't you?
The one thing I thought that preparation is very important.
Preparation?
Yeah, because the script given by Mr. Brian was written in English.
Right.
And I thought I should have translated to Japanese before. I read the English script and translate into Japanese in my mind and ask the interviewee in Japanese, but it is not efficient. So I should have translated into Japanese before.
Yes, so in this particular case for the Suwano conference, I prepared all the questions in English.
Yes.
But then they had the students had to translate them into Japanese and ask them to the presenters. And actually, we were moving at quite high speed. So sometimes we would just finish one interview and start the next. And so the student would be kind of reading to understand the question in English, and then translating it and then asking that. So that was quite challenging. But that also shows you that you really need to prepare your questions in advance. Yeah. How about you, Ayako-san? You were also doing interviews. What was your experience like?
Yeah, I haven't interviewed. I have not experience, and I also have difficulty in translating from English to Japanese. And I also wondered when to check the question because I listen to answers, people's answers.
Okay. Where are you? I can hear a lot of background noise.
Sorry.
Okay.
Phoenix campus.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes. So one of the other challenges when doing the interview is actually to make the interviewee feel comfortable. Was there any good strategies for doing that?
I talked with the interviewee before the shooting about isn't it cold today or never been to Toronto.
Actually, your audio is breaking up a little bit. I don't know if you can change your audio setting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Wait.
Yes.
Yes, this is the better audio.
Yeah. That's
Yeah. I'm sorry. I chose the wrong audio.
okay.
And yeah, actually, I try to do some conversation with my interviewees about how's the weather and where are you from. Actually, I'm from Hokkaido and it's not cold in Toronto for me like that. And yeah, I broke the ice
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah, right. That was something that Luis was gave me some feedback on, because when you were first doing the interviews in the morning, you would just go straight to the question.
Yeah. He told me about that.
Yeah,
the
the
day, yeah.
interview is, okay, yeah, but
Yeah.
nice if you make the interviewee feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So on the technical side, maybe we could hear from the camera operators what your experience was like. So maybe Tenchin, if you want to go first.
Yeah, we learned a lot from Louis this time. Like from the beginning, the most important thing is to set the camera at the same height with the interviewee's eyes. And then we should be care about the background, and the background should be maybe simple but somehow representative for the place you are interviewing. And then we should always do like the mic check, the volumes, and also and maybe keep the light not too bright or not too dark. And that is some basic things, I think.
Yeah, there was the audio issue is really important, because I know that Luis was encouraging you to wear the headphones and to be really listening carefully to the audio, but at the same time paying attention to the actual audio monitor on the camera to make sure that it wasn't going into the red. So there were quite a few things that you were doing. Okay. Quite a few things that you picked up there in terms of little techniques. How about you, Ryu? What did you discover through the film?
Yes. I also learned a lot from Louis, and what I found was that it was like, I had to be really careful with everything. Like we can see that, I mean, like it looks like it's going well as long as we see the screen of the camera, but actually we had to be really careful with the volume of the video, or the brightness, or the height of the interviewee's eyes, and the background, and all that sort of stuff was like for every time, if the people or the place where we should changes, we have to be careful with it. And yes, I thought that was what I learned from it, to be careful with it, with everything.
Yeah, because sometimes you were filming, so you started filming in the morning, and then and that was outside, and then later on you were filming inside, and you have a whole set of other issues around lighting and audio levels and so on, and each time you need to really prepare properly to do that. And actually, it was quite a lot of pressure because we were moving quickly. And sometimes we would say, okay, now you have to do Tachikawa-san, quickly, film, get ready to film Tachikawa-san. And so, yeah, it was kind of constant, wasn't it? Yeah. Kit, do you want to say anything?
I think it's kind of funny. I mean, in the initial stages of learning how to use camera and shooting on location, after a while, it's a little bit like driving the car in that those things become quite normal or natural, where you are automatically checking and listening, and you make a routine. So at first it's very kind of, whoa, there's so much going on, but the more you do it, the more you practice, like everything, it becomes easier. I mean, every situation interviewing people is always different, especially because you've got you're working with a different person, and that person brings with them a particular feeling or a nervousness or something. But the technical thing, generally, you know, it's really about practicing and being very familiar with the camera, so that when you're faced with challenges like, you know, the quality of the light or the brightness or some sort of the location's difficult to shoot in, you've got a sense of what you need to do. It's great to hear that it went so well.
Yeah, one other thing that really came across to me was teamwork. Teamwork is really important between, say, the interviewer and also the camera operator. And so Luis was getting them to do things like, oh, camera rolling, action, this kind of thing, so that, you know, at least they know the camera is rolling before you start asking the questions and so on. So it's kind of cool. And at the beginning, neither team were doing that, but at the end, everybody was doing it. So it was really quite amazing how the approach changed from early morning to mid-afternoon to the end of the day, as you picked up more confidence in what you were doing. So that was great. I don't know, does anybody else have any comments or anything you'd like to say about your production so far? No? One of the things I did before the shoot was I prepared like a big long list of questions, and I kind of identified questions for each of the people who we were going to interview. And in addition to that, I also provided lots of examples of B-roll that I would like the teams to film. And so when there was chance, they would go and try to capture some of the B-roll that was some of the images that I'd shared with them, like particular streets or particular houses and so on and so forth. And even the students came up with their own ideas of good B-roll. So for instance, there's a steam locomotive that comes through the town at 1 o'clock, which in the afternoon, which I didn't know about. And then I think one team went and filmed it. So it's really interesting B-roll that we'll have there. The only thing I really regret my side is that I forgot about the Osmo Pocket camera. We had the Osmo Pocket and we could have done some kind of moving around the town and inside the conference hall. So that was my fault. I had too many things that I was trying to handle, but that we could have also done like a time-lapse type shooting as well. So we missed out on a potential opportunity there to have a little bit of sort of special effects. But overall, and then as you can see by the quality of the video I shared with you, what you produced was very professional level, very good standard. So what I would hope you do is that you will go to your production when you're filming this week or next week, that you will also make sure that you get these basics right and that you produce a very high quality professional production in terms of the framing of the picture and also the audio quality and so on, and also that the way that you interact and get the interviewee to relax and feel comfortable on camera. Okay, anybody got any comments before we move on? All happy? Okay, so what we're now turning our attention to the next item, which is basically editing. So how to keep organized as you get into your edit. And Kit, do you want to chip in here? Oh, you're muted.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So as you move forward and you've got a hard drive or some SD cards with some material, now comes the fun part. Well, it's fun, but it's also daunting as well, because where do we begin with all of this material and how do we turn that into a film, or the film that you had envisaged or pitched at the beginning of the process? And it's important, I think, to recognize, sort of along the lines of what this quote says, is that nothing beyond what can be seen or felt from the dailies, or the dailies basically means the rushes or the material that you've captured. So nothing beyond what you've captured is relevant anymore in terms of the film you're making, because any document such as your proposal or your treatment, they're just old maps. So you put them in the attic for your biographer, and the film needs to be discovered in your dailies. So the film that you have is going to be in the material that you've recorded, basically. And if you don't have it in your material, then it's not going to make it into your film. So now you've got to change hats. You're no longer a collector of material. You become a surrogate for the audience, you and the editor. So what that means is that you now are thinking like an audience in terms of what an audience would be curious or interested in, what they would like to see next. So as the director or as the storyteller, you have to empty yourself of prior knowledge, and your understandings and emotions must come wholly from what you're seeing on the screen in the materials that you've got. So that can be hard, but you have to recognize that the film that you have is the material that you've got. So I think the important thing with the teamwork in this instance is around sharing ownership of the story and working collaboratively together to find the story. So generally what happens is the creatives, like the director, the editor, the crew, will watch the material that's been shot at the end of the day. And then one habit that I tend to do is when I'm watching those materials is I'll have my notebook with me, and I'll just write some, whatever's in my mind at the time around those, what I'm seeing, what's in my mind's eye, how I think maybe that shot might work with another shot, or if it fits into a sequence of some description. So it's really just you're sort of jamming, you brainstorming with the material that's on the screen. And also once you've had a look at that material, if you're not happy with the quality of it, then think about reshooting it. So an example was last year, the key interview was done next to a vending machine, and we encouraged the filmmakers to consider going back and asking the main character if he could do another interview in another location, or to make that location quiet. So because, like mentioned before, the film that you have, the film that you're going to make is the film that's in the dailies. So if the technical quality of those dailies isn't great, then the overall film itself isn't going to be as great as it can be.
Yeah, but they didn't go back and reshoot, unfortunately.
No, they didn't. They didn't go back. And maybe they were nervous about having to tell the person they were working with. But I think in that instance, you just have to overcome your nervousness and think about, because they want to see a good film as well. They want to see themselves in a good film. So if you explain that there was a technical issue or something like that, people generally understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the rushes or the dailies, what you're looking for is quality performances. So if there's a consistency in the performance of the person on the screen, if there's sort of energy levels are high, if the material sort of speaks to other bits of material that you've already recorded, that the action in each shot has continuity with the previous shot, or So you need to make sure, say, for example, one of your characters has got a blue shirt on and they're skateboarding down the road. And then the next shot you've got is that person skateboarding in the opposite direction with a red t-shirt on. There's continuity issues there in that those two images are not going to cut together. So you need to think about and make sure that the way that you're filming, that the material that you're looking at, does there have continuity? You're also looking at the camera work. You need to note if there's problems with focus at any point, if there's an unsteady bit when the camera shakes, maybe there's a camera movement, or maybe there's an issue with the exposure. Like what was mentioned before, the brightness. So, is there a problem with the shot because it's too bright or it's not bright enough? Or the shots that you've got, if there's 5 shots, one of them might not match the others because you were facing a different direction. And then also, as mentioned, sound quality. So it's just noting down the quality, if there's any ruffling sounds, or if there's a technical kind of crunchy sound or something, or if the levels in the sound itself are too high or too low. And generally what you'll do is you'll do a logging sheet. So this is a shot log, and this is a really good way. So you go through all of the shots that you have, and you note what the time code is, what the duration of the shot is, give it a short description, note what the audio, where the audio is coming from, and then a comment. So you might write, for maybe the shot at 1 minute 20 that goes for 8 seconds in the hallway, you might write, a bit dark, or the lighting isn't great, or as here at 1 minute 39, the shot of the interview with Joe Bloggs with the lapel microphone, there's a note there that it's mostly good, but you might want to break that down a little bit more into at what points do we hear the clicking or the popping or the ruffling sounds on the audio, just so that when you're starting to edit, you know your material really, really well. But I would encourage you to do that shot list, that shot log, because when you come to the edit and you start piecing the stories together, you will go back to that log again and again and again to look for shots to add in, and it will make the editing process much more easier. Another really important process that's involved with the edit is transcribing your footage. So transcribing is often done when you have an interview with a character, and what you're wanting to do is write a transcript of what they say in their interview. And generally what we use, Brendan and I and others like Luis, we use a program called InScribe. And it's a really great program that enables you to look at the footage, set up the time code so that you can type every 5 seconds what that person says, and then add another time code, and then type what that person says, and then add another time code, so that you can start seeing a transcript of what that person is saying every 5 seconds. And every 5 seconds is a good amount of time, because that's normally the amount of time that you need for subtitles. Subtitles are normally 4 to 5 seconds, but I think 5 seconds is good in terms of transcribing what people say in a sequential order. You can also use InScribe to translate from Japanese to English or English to Japanese. And it's super helpful when you're wanting to actually create subtitles, where you can copy and paste those into the editing software.
Yeah, just to chip in here for the translation, you might want to just use something like DeepL and just copy the, if you've done a Japanese transcript for the video, just copy that in line by line to DeepL, and you'll get the English version there. So you don't need to worry about the absolute perfect translation there, but this online system, it's free to use and gives you the translation that you can use for the subtitles.
Mhm. Another step in the work is taking the shooting treatment that you've written at the beginning before you started filming and working out how the shots are going to fit together. So this is a kind of what they call working up the script. So there's a sort of a wide shot. You might shoot a wide shot for 5 or 6 lines of the dialogue, and then you might insert a cutaway of something on the wall, and then come back to a mid shot of the interview. Working up the script is often a process that happens in scripted projects, so like drama projects or TV series, but it can be quite useful if you have done an interview with more than one camera. So you might have a camera that's shooting a wide, and then another camera that's shooting a close-up of that person's face, and you can kind of cut back and forth between, in terms of when the moments of tension are, you might want to have a nice close-up on that person's face as they're communicating.
Yeah, or if you have a narration as well.
Yeah.
The narration works really well. Like here, you've got some text at the beginning that could be the narrator, and then you have something that's coming from one of the persons that you've interviewed, and then the narrator comes back in and explains something else. I don't know if any of you have in mind to have a storyteller or a narrator for your video, but that's sometimes when the script works really well.
A script is also, they call it a paper edit. So once you've done your logging, once you've identified everything that people are saying, then you might want to actually try and, on paper, piece together what the film is going to look like and try to cut the film based on that paper edit. And in some ways that's quite useful. I mean, we've seen that with the way that Luis does his work, where he takes screenshots of the different locations and what people are saying, and he kind of builds a storyboard, a visual storyboard of what the film's going to look like, and then he'll use that and he'll cut the film from there. Okay, so once you've done all of the logging of your material, then you're in a stage that's called assembly editing, and what you're working towards is your first assembly. And generally what an assembly is it's trying to build the structure of the film that you're going to make. So what the suggestion is that you have a look through all of the material that you have and try to log it and remember it. Sit through everything, all of the bad bits, all of the shaky bits, all the aborted takes, everything, just so that you know what you've got. And then obviously decide in your logging sheets which ones are the good takes and which ones are the bad takes, so that when you're assembling, you're using the good takes. And you figure out the coverage. So you're working out, okay, well, in this scene, I have a nice big wide and I can use that for the majority of the edit, but then I might want to cut into a close-up, or I might want to cut away to some B-roll. So it's about starting to build out an initial assembly of which shots you're going to use where. And like I was saying before, you might do that in a paper edit form and then come to the edit in the edit suite, and other people actually just do it directly into the edit suite. So in building out that first assembly, try not to overlap too many images. So if, for example, the example they give here is that if we're seeing one speaker talking and then we cut away to another person looking, and then we cut back to that person speaking, try not to kind of merge those shots or make anything fancy happen. Just at this moment, just plonk them in order. The idea at this point is just to see what the story might look like in order. And to build out just the absolute simplest version of the film that you can. It doesn't need to be perfect at this point. It's more about just assembling all of the story blocks in order. And if you've got 2 takes, like, you know, you've asked the same question twice, or the person has said the same answer twice, or you have the person doing action twice and you can't decide which one is better, then just put them both in and you'll find the film material will find its natural, you'll find the natural one that you think is better. But at this point in the assembly, the idea is just to put, no one needs to see it. We don't need to see the assembly at this point. It's more about a process for you of just putting all the building blocks of the story together into the timeline. Brendan?
Yep.
I think that next one, that's talking about those points in terms of building a simple version and
okay, sorry.
2 versions. It's okay.
Okay. Go on, Kit. What did you want?
Yeah, so I think in this next session now, we want you to go away in your groups and to discuss where you're at in terms of what you have done, what you have recorded, if you have all of the materials ready to go, or if there are still some shooting scenes that you need to do, and to start thinking about what you need to do next. So if it's about editing, who's going to do the logging, who's going to start stitching the materials together and having a look at them on a timeline. Brendan, did you want to say anything?
I'm making the groups.
Okay, yeah. And I think it's also at this point, if you haven't already had a look at the material, to start thinking through if you have recorded everything that you need to record. So if you still have 1 or 2 scenes to go, that to try and schedule when you might be recording the remaining material that you need to make, because the next sort of deadlines in terms of the rough cut is coming up towards the end of this month, and it will come up very quickly. So it's worth trying to have all of the shooting done, hopefully by next week.
Yeah, so you've got 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now everything is sort of coming together because you're probably still shooting, and then you also need to be doing what we've pointed out to you. So you need to be working towards your assembly, and then you'll have by the 21st of December a rough cut. Now it's not the final video, it's just your initial ideas are beginning to take shape, and you share that with us at that time, and that's when we can give you some feedback. So for instance, we can say, well, we're not, that interview wasn't really good, there's some problem with the audio quality there, or we could say that you don't have much B-roll to support what the person is saying, so you might want to correct this, and so on. We can give you a lot of feedback that will then help you as you go towards the final cut at the end of January. So
I think it's worth saying here also, don't be afraid to reshoot if you need to. It's very common. If the quality of the work isn't good, or you didn't get the interview that you wanted and you want to do the interview again, or you need to go out and shoot some more B-roll, then don't be afraid. Just go out and do it, because it will make the film better, in terms of, because you've been in the edit suite, you're inside of the film now, you're understanding how to make the story and how to put those building blocks together, and you know very clearly what building blocks are missing.
So is there anything that you're confused about, or any questions you have? I think one thing that's really important is that you work as a team. So for instance, somebody takes the responsibility for transcribing the video as it's coming in, or someone is actually going to be responsible for making sure all the files are in on the computer in Adobe Premiere, and starts to put the assembly together and so on. That's where someone is also, okay, once the transcription is done, somebody's going to make the translation of that, oversee that. So, or someone will write the basic script. Now, the extent to which you do each one of these tasks is really up to each team, but it's certainly about working together well. And I guess the other point that you really need to discuss is like, where are you right now? And what do you need to do immediately in order to move your project along? So in order to get all the filming done, and then how quickly can you get into the studio to start working on the editing, and who's going to do what by when? So if you don't have any questions, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms to give you 30 minutes to work in your team and to come up with a plan for how you're going to get through these next 2 weeks.